Our topic today is home theater receivers, specifically the models from Denon and Marantz, which is why I am honored to welcome back to the podcast Phil Jones, Global Director of Training at Harman International, which recently became the owner of these two iconic brands. So welcome, Phil, and fill us in on that new title.
Yes. Hey, Brian and Chris. It's nice seeing you guys. I just saw you at Expona and not Expona, Audio Advice Live and Cedia.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's nice to be able
shows.
to. I know it seems like every time I turn around, I actually see you guys, and it's nice to actually come and hang out and talk about our two audio brands, Denon and Marantz.
So there's a lot to talk about. Denon makes 13, I think I counted 13 receivers separated into three different lines, the A line, the S line, and the X line. So how do you want to help people navigate how to shop for these receivers, especially when they're priced from $400 all the way up to $7,200?
Okay.
What do you like to tell people shopping for a Denon AVR?
Well, the first thing, if you look at Denon is actually has the largest market share when it comes to AVRs. More customers buy Denon AVRs than any other brand by far. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we offer products to meet the different needs of different customers at different price points. So, for example, an S-Series, think of it as a great way for us to deliver the performance of Denon at an approachable price point. Our value lineup still has a lot of the latest features that you would want, like Dolby Atmos and streaming music and Bluetooth and 8K inputs, but it's designed to be something that is attainable for pretty much anyone. So if you're looking at maybe building your first home theater system or starting off with maybe a stereo system and then moving into a home theater system, that is where the S-Series comes in. The X-Series is kind of our step up. It's for more of an enthusiast. So they're looking for more capabilities, more channels, more power, more video switching, custom install features. They want to utilize it with a control system. That is where the X comes in. And then the A-Series, think of it like if you were a car analogy, that is like our AMG. You tell the engineers, you made this great X-Series. Now, if I remove the handcuffs of pricing that we're normally trying to do, what would you do if you were going to build a product and you were given full carte blanche to build the product you want? And that's where you end up with something like an A1H, which is 15 channels at like 170 watts per channel. And you end up with a unit like that. So that's kind of the way that we try to explain those particular models.
So so you mentioned the flagship. Let's kind of hang on that for a second. 15 channels, top of the line. How are they able to cram? I don't know if cram's the right word, but so much technology into one box, because that's essentially what a receiver
does. Well, that's one of the things.
Box.
It is a big box, right? So we let people know that just the power supply in an A1H weighs more than a Denon X2800. Why? Because you got to have enough current to drive those channels. And like Denon always has our multi-channel guarantee that says that we can drive up to like at least 5 channels at least, at a certain price, a power level. Now, when people see these things, they go, well, 15 channels at whatever, 170, whatever that wattage is. Can you drive all of those channels at that volume at the same time? Probably not. But it's going to be rare that every single surround sound channel in your system is ever going to be playing at full volume at the same time. Most of the time, it's 3, 4, 5 channels that are really working hard, and the other ones are just doing effects. We know that we can deliver enough current and enough wattage to reach the full potential of those channels when they're needed. By having such a big power supply in it. But you end up with a bigger box. If you think about the depth of the thing, here's a warning. When you get something like an A1H, it is deeper than most shelves. It is taller than most AVRs. So those are the kind of things you have to take into account And you need to have a heavy shelf, because I've seen those middle Atlantic rack shelves kind of bend down when you start putting one of these A1Hs in there. But the goal is as much capability into a single chassis as we possibly can. And each year we keep pushing the envelope, starting with back in the days, the X8500. And now we get into things like the A1H and the A10H.
So just to hang on the A10H and the A1H, because those are the two flagships models, is it mainly the channel? Is it the number of channels that creates that price gap?
Yeah.
Or is there that's the main difference?
The main thing is they both have the monolithic kind of design, where you have the amplifier channels on the left and the right with the big EL core transformer in the middle. It's just that as you add more channels, those additional channels require, there's two things you get: additional channels and additional processing. So by adding the additional channels and the additional processing requires a bigger box and a bigger power supply. So by the time you build a big enough box to hold everything with a power supply that can drive it all with the video processing to process it all, you end up with a box that's much larger, and one of the reasons why the price went up. And like I said, the thing does what? We have a 946 in our theater, where we're running 9 of the basically 702s all the way around as the surrounds, and then four DB1 subs, and then the end ceilings. And it is insane what that sounds like. And people are shocked that it's all being driven off of just one receiver.
And have you set that up with Dirac yet? Dirac ART?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Actually, we did, because it was so funny when we built the room. We always say when it comes to you want to make sure you put the speakers in the right position. Then if you can treat the room with room treatment, you do that. Then you apply room compensation. So it's a very good room. The speakers are placed pretty much where they should be, but you still end up with, like, when you run 4 subwoofers and 15 speakers, you do end up with peaks and nulls and things like that. The active room treatment, it is like night and day. I'm sure. Wow. I think Chris. I'm not sure if you guys saw it at we did the demonstration at CEDIA, and the difference is shocking. And so it does make it even better, because this makes sure that everything works more harmoniously and together to give you a very deep, smooth bass response and everything else. So it works. It does make a difference.
Yeah, even with room treatments, the speakers interact with each other, like you said, and particularly subwoofers. So I'm pretty excited to check that out. When is it going to be shipping for the AVR-X 3800H? Is it available now or not?
It is available now. So if somebody wants to know, if you go to Dirac.com/Denon, you will see all of the models. Basically, any Denon model that has 4 subwoofer outputs support active room treatment. So that's 3800, 4800, 6800, A1H, A10. So anything with 4 is the quickest way to know if it's going to support. And then you can buy it either as a additional add-on. I think it's like if you already have like bass control and stuff, it's an additional $299. Or right now you can buy the full package, which has Dirac Live, Dirac bass control, and Dirac active room treatment. I think it's $799 instead of like $900.
But now, is that something you can use on multiple receivers if you have 2 in the house, or is it per unit?
It's per license. It's per unit. Okay. Now we get asked a lot, why does it, sometimes you'll see AVRs that have some version of Dirac for free, but we actually have, you have to purchase a license, and people ask us why. So think of an AVR as a all-inclusive vacation. Right. Because when you go all inclusive, you want your meal, your entertainment, your room, everything else. And AVR has to do video switching, power, Bluetooth, streaming music, all that stuff. We give you an all-inclusive meal, right? Yeah. An all-inclusive. And part of all-inclusive is you're paying for you're getting Odyssey. So that's like if I went to a vacation and the all-inclusive included a steak dinner. But you tell me I want steak and lobster, right? Right. That lobster tail is, while we're all inclusive, not everybody wants to pay for that lobster tail.
Sure.
I gave you the steak, right? So we looked at it and said, we're going to give you a very good digital room compensation software. Remember, we have S, X, A. So we're trying to find a digital room compensation that will work well and fulfill the full capabilities of an S, an X, and an A. So Odyssey gives us that. Basic on-screen menu, follow the on-screen and follow the steps for an S. Maybe using the $20 app for an X, and then maybe getting the multi-Q X software for the A. Well, now you want Dirac. If I do that, I have to buy a license for every single AVR, and I'm going to raise the price of every single AVR. So everybody pays for a lobster tail, whether they want a lobster tail or not. So what we want to do is we want to give you the ability to buy it a la carte.
Sure.
But I can't charge everybody for it because it wouldn't really be free. We would just have to raise the price of everything to give everybody.
I think it's more like having
options.
an open bar. It's like, yeah, the food's included, but if you want something to drink,
or no, you get the house vodka, right? You want the good stuff. Right. You gotta pay a little bit more. So
I want to go back quickly to the night and day difference because that is. I think that's really going to open up a lot of people's eyes and ears. But what exactly was the night and day difference? Or what level of Dirac was installed and calibrated versus what you would normally get without it?
So each time we add another version of Dirac, we continue to upgrade the system. So we start off with Dirac Live. Does a really good job with impulse control to make sure that that all those speakers hit the points at the position at the same time. So that really helped with dialogue, mid-range vocals, impact, right? Adding bass control did a better job of blending those 4 subwoofers together. So for example, when we first put the system in, when we ran 2 subs, the bass was good. 3 subs, good. The 4th sub, there was a dip. We're like, what's going on? So by experimenting with it back with the Odyssey days, we figured out that I needed to flip the left rear sub 45 degrees out of phase.
Wow.
To fix the problem. That took forever, right?
Yeah.
When we did bass control, fixed. Right? I didn't have to do any of that. It's just automatic. But still, you still end up with peaks and nulls in the room, right? Because that's why you put in, bass absorption and things to try to absorb some of that stuff that happens when the bass waves hit the corners of the rooms and other places in the rooms. And that's where the room treatment comes in.
Right.
Active room treatment, if I have a 9.4.6, I have basically 19 speakers in my room. If the left subwoofer has a problem with a frequency, the other 18 speakers that can play that down to that frequency, if they can play it on that frequency, will help correct that for every position in the room. So as a user, what you end up with is not only are the subs blended well, any peaks and nulls that lived in the system are noticeably fixed. The next thing is cancellation. A lot of that stuff is fixed. You end up with much better bass response. It appears to be deeper. And as you walk around the room, the bass response is the same. And I challenge anybody to go home, run your subwoofer, grab a 60 hertz test tone and walk, or 40 hertz test tone, and walk around the room. You'll see that test tone volume go up and down. On active room treatment, if I did that and you walked around the room, that difference in that 40 hertz is barely noticeable. So wider sweet spot, better bass throughout the room, better articulation of bass. The bass appears to be deeper, and it's blended better with your high end, which clears up the vocals and things like that, and the mid range of the signal as well. It just makes for a noticeable experience in the room.
So one thing about that advanced room correction, it doesn't just plug in a mic, press play, 15 minutes later you're done. So when you were setting up the system with ART, give me a rough idea how long it took, how many measurement points you needed to get the best results out of it.
They, at a minimum, Dirac recommends 9 positions.
9 measurement points. Okay.
9 measurements. But
Makes sense because you want to have every listener getting a good experience.
Yeah. But what they suggested is as many as possible, or at a minimum, do as many positions as you have speakers. So I have so for example, a 9.4.6 is 19 speakers,
measurement points,
20 positions. We did 20 just around the way. And then also that 20 positions, we tried to put them as around the different areas where people are going to be sitting. Because remember, it's going to say, okay, left front seat. What's the problem with the left rear subwoofer in the left front seat? And how are the other speakers going to help that subwoofer deliver the proper bass in the left front seat by working together? So
without breaking it in the left rear seat or the front right seat or whatever.
Exactly. So the whole idea of it is just insanely complex, way above my way above my freaking technical level. But just know that the science is very good and it works really, really well.
And what I like about it is that the X3800H that I have in my basement right now, I've had it for over 2 years, and now it keeps getting better. Now I can get Dirac ART. I don't have to buy new hardware. I mean, the license is not free, and I think they actually do go on sale on Black Friday too.
Yes, they do. There will be a Black Friday sale.
So I think for hobbyists to be able to take something that they invested in 3 or 4 years ago and still be able to add value to it and make your system better and better is pretty compelling.
Yeah, that's something I tell people all the time, right? There isn't going to be any new surround sound formats coming. I mean, you hear some kind of crazy Dolby Vision, blah, 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 but they're pretty much Dolby Atmos, DTS-X, IMAX Enhanced, is Dolby Pro Logic, Dolby Digital. That is going to be the way that you're going to be enjoying. There may be some other spatial audio, but there isn't some new mystical, magical surround sound format coming down the pipeline that is going to make this massive improvement in your sound, right? But if I tell you, if you have this capability and I hit this button and I run this processor, immediately everything you own, all your Dolby Atmos, all your DTX, all your Dolby Pro Logic, all your IMAX Enhanced is immediately going to get better. With the gear you already have, that's pretty revolutionary.
It's pretty impressive.
So for someone that's hearing how cool this is, they know they could go to the top of the line and they're going to spend $7,200 for the receiver and then another, I think you said $800 for the Dirac
license.
For the Dirac license.
Package.
So that's $8,000. So you can get the lobster with that meal.
You get the suite, you get the hotel suite, the private jet, and the filet, and the lobster tail, right?
Okay, but there's also the beginning, like Chris was talking about, the AVR-H, the X3800, I think is the first model, the least expensive model in the Denon AVR line that will offer this same capability, not up to 15 speakers, but up to, I think it's 9 point. You can correct me there, Phil. Like how many speakers?
They start off at you could do like a 9.1, and then you go to 11.1 after that. And even in that one, it makes a big difference. I could tell you a scenario for that. We have we have an in-wall system, right? That's utilizing a Cinema 30, 3 Bowers CW 8.3s in the front, 2 8.2s in the back. It was a 5.2 system, but we're running 4 in-wall subwoofers. Problem with in-wall subwoofers is the in-wall subwoofer goes where the in-wall subwoofer will fit, right? So a lot of times in-wall is one of the most challenging because I can move my main speakers 2 or 3 inches forward, back to the left and the right to try to fix those problems. But once an in-wall is in, an in-wall is in. Right? And I just did active room treatment on that system. And by making, because with the 4 in-wall subs, and the difference was amazing, in that I was like, wow, the bass is deeper. The subs are working better together. It's just tighter. And that was the biggest difference. So as you get into things like in-walls or even less expensive stuff, where your spouse is not going to let you put in this kind of thing, this is where it ends up being so it's going to matter. It's going to make it, the more speakers you have and the better quality of the speakers and the deeper those speakers can play, the bigger the benefit is going to be. But everybody, if they hit this button, I don't care if it's a Polk system with a 3800 and two Polk 10-inch subwoofers, is going to notice a difference.
Right. Well, you just switched over to Marantz. You mentioned Cinema 30, which is the top of the line Marantz AVR. And I think a lot of people have the question, Denon versus Marantz, which one do I pick? Which one's better? Everybody, the prices kind of cross over in the middle, where Marantz starts out a little bit more expensive, and then Denon just keeps on going to a higher level where Marantz stops. So,
but then Marantz transitions into the preamp processor, so a more expensive system at the very flagship. But I guess that's the question I get a lot is, you got these two models that are very similar to each other on paper. I guess maybe the Cinema 50 and the AVR-X 3800H. I think those.
Yeah, we always use the Cinema 30 and the 6800 because that is the easiest to see from a distance. So let's talk about it.
So what justifies the price difference?
Okay, so let's talk about this. We have two brands, right? Both brands come from think of great sound as climbing a mountain, getting to the top of the mountain. That's the goal, right? Denon has this heritage of 115 years, right? And they start off as an analog company. By the way, if you don't know, Denon is the oldest Japanese audio company, period. There may be some other audio companies, Japanese companies that make audio, but they didn't start off with audio. The very first thing they made was a turntable as well as vinyl. Denon was also has a history of first. After 115 years, why is it still the number one AVR? Because we're always the first to market. Things like PCM. There wouldn't be a CD if it wasn't for Denon, right? They were the first receivers with things like IMAX Enhance and DTSX and all of those things. So not only are the oldest established one, there's this heritage of analog because it is this heritage of digital and this histories of first, right? That is their mentality. So they have this established history. Marantz started off as an American company, and it's the old story of a person that an audiophile isn't happy with what he already had on the market, so he builds his own, becomes so popular, other people ask him to build it, and that's where that brand started off. Both brands are under our umbrella. They're both ran by Japanese engineering teams. However, they are operated individually of each other. So think of it as almost like if you look at Volkswagen, Audi, and Porsche, they're both under the same group, the Volkswagen group, right? But no one would look at those two cars and say those two cars are the same. We have a slide that we always show that says there's common things that you would expect any AVR to have. It's got to have Bluetooth. It's got to have streaming services. It's got to have video switching. It's got to have whatever those things would be. That stuff is built together, right?
Okay.
Then the things that make a Marantz sound like a Marantz and a Denon sound like a Denon, those teams are given free carte blanche to go do it the way that they want to do it. Because Marantz lives at a higher price point, they have more tools that they can utilize in their toolbox to customize the sound to make it sound like Marantz. So think of it as you buying a sauce, a very good sauce that's pre-made, versus you buying the ingredients at a 5-star restaurant and making the sauce from scratch. Both are going to be barbecue sauce, but the ability of the chef to make the exact barbecue sauce to go on his ribs, if I'm making it from scratch, is going to be higher and give me more tuning capability than if I buy the sauce from off the counter.
Making me hungry, Phil.
I can still make a very good piece, but that from scratch sauce is going to cost more, right?
Yeah.
So Marantz has more parts in it. Those parts tend to be more expensive because they're catering to a higher price demographic as a whole. So while both have their own tuning and they both have their own dedicated sound master, Yamauchi-san runs the sound master team for Denon. Nothing becomes a Denon without his approval. And Ogata-san runs the sound master team for Marantz, and nothing gets the Marantz logo without his approval Ogata-san has a little bit more bespoke ingredients that he could actually utilize to build the product that he wants to build, right? Which one is better is the one that you like. They have totally different. If I take two receivers, 100 watts per 100 by 145 by 11, a Cinema 30 and a 6800. If I put them on those signature speakers and I level match them and I switch between the two rapidly, you would hear a difference. Both would sound great, but you would hear a difference. And then it just becomes which one pulls your heartstrings? Which sound do you like? And that's where it comes in. So
but Marantz does have a unique Marantz does have a unique amp topology, right? The HDAM amplifier module. Is that something unique to Marantz?
Yeah, so when we talk about that, think of that goes back to that sauce versus pre-made from scratch, right? Yeah. Most amplifiers use what's called an HDAM. I mean, op amp, little amplifier, little things that boost signal. So I'm going to boost the preamp going in. I'm going to boost the headphone amp. I'm going to boost the phono stage. There's a million little circuits in the amplifier that needs to be boosted from a little signal to a big signal. That's where those op amps come in, right? If you look at a Denon, they buy a very good op amp, the best ones, and then the Soundmaster looks and says, which op amp is going to get closer with my other pieces that I put in the box to get the sound that I believe represents Denon. If you look at Marantz, instead of using an op amp, they use an HDAM, hyper dynamic amplifier module. It's discrete circuits that do what an op amp can do. But it has a faster slew rate, it's more dynamic, and now I can really fine-tune that. Now, of course, a discrete board is going to cost more than an integrated circuit. So that's one of the reasons why Marantz products have more parts in them. And
the higher price tag.
Exactly. And if I'm making small acoustic changes to the little signal, the preamp stage, the phono stage, by the time you amplify it, that difference is really noticeable.
Okay. And do all the Marantz Cinema series, are they compatible with the Dirac art that we were just talking about before?
I believe most of them, with the exception of, most of them have 4 sub-outs. So I think with the exception of like a Cinema 70.
That's the slim line, right?
Yeah, the slim line, maybe an NR, the NR series, or maybe the very, very first Cinema 60 may not have. I have to look, but anything after
Cinema
that,
50 and above, Cinema 50, 40, 30.
Yeah, exactly. A1A. I mean, amp, AV10, amp, AV10, AV20, that level up.
Right. Why do you guys go backwards again? The 40 is better than the 50. The 30 is better than the 40.
Because
that doesn't make sense to this brain.
That's a Marantz thing. Marantz has always said lower is better, and Denon has always been higher is better. So that's the best way I can explain it. Now the next thing is when we get to the top, we have this A1H for the Denon, right? But then we have this AV separates for the Marantz. As we get to the top, Marantz looked at it and said, what's the best way when they get to a certain price point? And when I get to a certain price point, separating it into an amplifier stage and a preamp stage makes more sense. Gives me more room so I can use bigger parts in things such as HDAMs. I can use bigger capacitors in the amplifier. Everything gets to be a little bigger because instead of trying to fit everything in one box, I don't care how big that box is, I have 2 boxes to do it. Okay. So, but 2 boxes cost more than 1 box. But guess what? The price point that Marantz plays at those higher end levels gives Marantz the opportunity to do that.
Now, Denon used to make separates. Is there any chance of them making a separate AV preamp processor, or leaving that to the Marantz brand at this point?
I think what happens is Denon believes that they like the whole idea of the one box integrated amplifier AVR solution. They have always been the king. You should see some of the old AVRs. They're like, they're like the size of a microwave. They're gigantic, right? They've always been, we're gonna put it all together. And Marantz has always said, okay, well, I will till I get to a certain point. But if separates become the better solution, we're going to go with separates and for that piece.
And the good Denons have a preamp output anyway, so if you want to replace all the power amplifiers or some of the power amplifiers with dedicated mono or stereo power amps, you can do that.
Yeah. The other thing too about the HDAMs, it was interesting. Like even if I look at a hi-fi Marantz hi-fi piece, they were looking at the Link 10N, and they were like, this Link 10N has like 50 or 60 HDAMs in it. And you go, yeah, because you need them for the amp stage, the preamp stage, the output stage. It isn't any time you're boosting signal. So when you look at it, you think HDAMs, there's HDAMs for the processing stage, but there's also HDAMs for other stages in the amplifier as well, the phono stages and stuff like that. That's why, regardless of the signal you're playing, a Marantz sounds a little different. And it's basically which one you like. Some people say Denon, we always say, is clean and dynamic, more like a recording studio, right? And then the other one is more smooth and live-like, which is what they say Marantz is like. Which one you like is the one that you like. We have found that most people who are hardcore, maybe movie-focused, sometimes gravitate more towards the Denon AVR, and those who are more music and movie or music focused first tend to gravitate towards the Marantz. But that's a preference. It's not for me to tell you which product is best for you. It's the one that you like is the one that you like.
Right.
So we talked about the high end. I think we covered that pretty well. But a lot of people are perhaps considering a soundbar or maybe the entry level AV receivers. They're not going to get the lobster tail. They're going to get a Dolby Atmos system. That's going to be incredible. And how do you help that? How do you help those customers that can spend a couple thousand, $1,000 to $3,000?
Well, that's one of the reasons what makes the benefit of the S. Because the first thing we have to let people know is video without audio is just surveillance, right? What makes a movie scary is the boo, right? Or in things like that. So we have to let people understand that the sound matters as much. If you want a great entertainment experience, whether it's a movie, a concert, footage, and even a football game, having the crowd cheer from behind you and the crunching of the players just adds to the whole thing. The crowd cheering and stuff like that. The sound matters. Denon is able to provide that solution starting from a sound bar, and then the S-Series gives you that ability to make that, it makes that leap or that jump from a sound bar into your first level of component speakers a lot more digestible. So you can go from, like we did a little video where you take like an S-Series Denon entry-level piece, maybe a Denon S760 and a Polk monitor series system. You're getting into a 5.1 system for, right at about $1,100, $1,200. It becomes a lot more accessible. Once you get into that, then you can start maybe upgrading speakers here or there, and then maybe adding additional channels if that permits. But that's the nice thing about having the S there, is the S allows you to, it makes it easier for you to make that step from a soundbar to an AVR. But the main thing is you got to have sound. Big TVs have thin sound, and thin sound does not deliver the creator's intent who made that movie. And you need to have the sound, and we want to give you those solutions.
So the other question that'll come up is the S-Series crosses over with the X-Series. There are some prices between them where you could move to an X and still be priced the same as an S. How do you tell customers when the prices are about the same?
Well, the X-Series has a few more. Normally, the equivalent X-Series when it comes to power and channel is a little bit more than the S. But you get things that you would think are minor, like detachable power cords, 12-volt triggers, things that people are going to utilize for installations. For everybody goes, well, detachable power cord. Well, guess what? If you zip tie everything and you want to swap it out, having a detachable power cord becomes a wonderful thing, right? 12-volt triggers, longer warranties, different level of Odyssey for processing because it has a bigger brain. So the X with the same channel count and wattage, the X is going to have a few more things that are going to make it better if you want to integrate it in when it comes to install flexibility and and some acoustic performance things such as a better higher level of Odyssey.
And I know we're gonna wrap this up fairly soon. I know you have to go.
Yeah, I got
but
2 minutes.
there is one subject that we're going to cover in another podcast, and that is HEOS. And all of the AVRs from Denon and Marantz have this built in. Can you just give them the quick overview of what HEOS offers?
Okay. So HEOS is our wireless music distribution system. And regardless of whatever Marantz or Denon product that you purchase, they utilize the same HEOS board that is built in Shirakawa, Japan. The benefit of that is you can mix and match Denon and Marantz sound bars, wireless speakers, hi-fi pieces, and know that all of those systems, all that wireless is going to work well together. We support a large amount of streaming services and Tidal, Spotify, Qobuz Connect, all of those different things at above CD quality. You used to have to sacrifice performance for convenience with wireless streaming. Now the streaming services offer higher sound quality than a lot of times a physical disc. So if you're looking for something that will deliver high quality multi-zone music from a wide range of products that work best in your application, whether you want a wireless speaker, sound bar, hi-fi piece, or AVR, that is where HEOS comes in. And next time we get together, we'll talk about that in more detail.